And we are live with today's 220-1101 Core 1 A Plus study group. Well, we are just getting things ready here in the pre-show. We got 10 minutes before we get started because we start at the top of the hour. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm monitoring the chat room here. We've got presentations set up here. Looks like the streaming is up and running. Our cache number is 3%. It's a little fuzzy, isn't it? I need to work on the focus on this camera. A little 3% is our cache number. That's the good number. We wanted it 3%. So it's always good to at least have an idea of what we want to do. And today we do have a pretty good idea. We have plenty of new questions to go through in this first hour. And in the second hour, I will be taking questions from the room, from anyone who's here. You can submit those questions at any time with the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. And you can see a tab at the top that allows you to submit questions for the second hour. That's also the link that you will use to answer questions in the first hour. It's a one-stop shop. You don't have to go anywhere but that link. Once you go there, you're good. You are fine. Hello, chat room. How's everyone doing? We've got your details up on the screen here, so you could easily pop over to professormesser.com/QA and put your virtual pin into our virtual map. It's like we have quite a few people checking in from all over the world. Thanks for being here. Lots to go through today. I've got all new questions, of course. We have plenty of things to go through. Let's see if we can get rid of that. We'll prep this. We'll get that ready. This looks good. Those things are good. Everything's looking pretty good. We got our recordings going. Yeah, you can't even see the Cylon anymore. I need to move the camera down. Cylons are going, so we're good there. We have video screens. Our video inputs all look good. Kind of turned, aren't they? Is the room listing? Is that what's happening? I need to slightly tweak that what I call the bird cam. That is my bird cam. It's actually named. I don't know if you can even see it. It actually says right here, bird cam. That's what it says underneath that screen. So that is, we've got a head cam. So I guess it's pretty obvious what that one's for. We have the bird cam, which is where the birds are. We have Mac Studio, which is the device that's in front of me. And we have the laptop, which is this device right here that shows the slides. And then I have an auxiliary display and a streaming display. The streaming display is really just there for reference. I don't really need that as a video input. The aux display is one that is sent over to my recording system just so that I know what is there. So we have lots to go through. We're about to have about 7 minutes before we get started. So feel free to grab a cold beverage, hang out, see what's going on. We have Mr. Green in the chat room says, "Hi, Professor Messer, passed my A+ last week. Congratulations." Mr. Green says, "You were a great help to that end. Keep doing what you're doing." So, well, as I like to say, I did the easy part. You're the one who had to walk into the room and take the exam. So congratulations to you. And that's got to feel good to have that A+ under your belt at this point. So, and if anyone is ever wondering what it really takes to get that A+ exam, it really is just about doing this, continuing down the process. I'm one of those people who, like many people, will start a project, and about halfway into the project, it tends to slow down a little bit, or it gets pushed to the side. Then you're off to a different project. So you have all of these half-written, half-done projects sitting around. And so when I started doing this, I realized we're going to actually have to complete the project. And that's sort of the process I feel like when you're going through an A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or really any industry certification, is you have to start the process, but then you really have to execute on it. You have to complete the project. And it's really difficult because it's such a large amount of content. Some of it is confusing. Some of it you're not quite certain. You have to do more research, and it's not easy. So anytime anybody tells me, "Hey, I got my A+, I got my Network Plus, I got my Security Plus," in my mind, I'm thinking back to the weeks and months of work that went into something like that. And you really should look back at when you started the project and look at what you did now and look at how successful we were at doing that. I think it's important. Would you suggest reading all the Core 1 and Core 2 and watch all the videos? I suggest getting as much content as you possibly can to help you understand every single one of the CompTIA exam objectives. If that means watching every video, watch every video. If that means going through and reading every book you can find, go read every book you can find. If that means, there's our 5-minute warning. If it means doing a lot of hands-on, go do a lot of hands-on. Everyone is a little bit different. So that's the thing. You have to figure out the best way to study for you, which you may not even know yet. I think if we go through our traditional universities, our schools, even primary schools, we're all taught sort of the same way. You go in a room, someone talks for an hour, you write down some things, you leave the room. Sometimes there's a little bit of homework, but that's pretty much it. And it's a very similar experience regardless of where you are. Now, once you get into college, there are some options for labs, chemistry labs, computer labs. There's some hands-on you can do. So there's a little bit more of that, some of that in high school as well. But it's not always there. And we sometimes don't know what is the best way for us to study because you've never been in a position before where you're the one who has to direct how you study. So I'm sort of getting into a little bit of a commentary there, but I think that's one of the things we have to think about when we're sitting down and going through these. And that's why when I see someone who's passed their exam, I have a whole backstory in my mind that, oh, well, they started this months ago and here's what they did. And it's a struggle, it's a war, and eventually we get through it. And I love it when people get through it. Do I recommend taking an exam at home or at a testing center? If I was going to take it, I would go to a testing center because I just don't want to set up things at home, worry about the internet, do all the things you have to do to make your setup secure, and then deal with perhaps a proctor who's having a bad day on the internet somewhere. Instead, go to a testing center. Everything's exactly how I expect it to be. I walk in, I give my ID, I sit down, I take my exam, and then I leave. And that is it. That's the easy part. But sometimes the testing center is an hour away. It's 2 hours away. Maybe there's no availability. So at that point, well, sure, of course I'm going to go to a testing center. I'm not going to do instead of going to a testing center in those scenarios, I would do it at home because it's much less painful to do the exams at home. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. Just have to figure out what makes the most sense, what it is for you. Testing center is exactly the same exam with exactly the same process and exactly the same software and exactly the same experience online as it is going to a testing center. Testing center online. They're both the same. You get exactly the same front end. Nobody has an advantage or disadvantage based on the content that's on the screen. It's identical. Obviously, if you're at home, you might even be more relaxed at home, or you might not be, depending on the dogs are barking outside, somebody's knocking on the door, nobody's there to kind of help maintain the sanctity of the room. That can be a challenge. So sometimes going to a testing center, it's almost like going to the library to study. Why aren't you studying in your room? Because there's too much going on. I need to go to the testing center. So just depends. Depends on how you like to do things, what makes sense for you. We got about a minute and a half before we get started. Settle in, get some things going. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We got some folks already stopping in. How are we doing on the stream? Folks already checking in. Thank you for being here. We'll get started in just a moment. We've got a lot to go through. I got all new questions. Some of them are questions I wrote months ago because I write a bunch of questions and then we use them. And sometimes I supplement them through the week. So I got all these written and done over the weekend. We have another study group in 2 days on Thursday. Similar study group, but it's for the 2201102. And finished writing those this morning. So finished writing the performance-based question, finished writing the multiple choice-based questions, and I locked those away. So now I have plenty to do between now and then. Do not worry. There's lots that I still have to write, but not for our live stream. I've got the live streams covered for the week. Thank you on the setup. If you want to know more about this setup, it is all documented on my website, professormesser.com. Scroll to the bottom. There's a section there for the Professor Messer Studio. You can read all about it. What keyboard is this? What mouse is that? What is that mixer? What is this monitor? What is that thing? They're all there. You'll be able to see. And I'm pretty much updated for most of them. So that part's good. All right, well, we've got a few seconds before we get started, 15 seconds or so. Just checking, making sure I have everything I need. This looks good on this screen. We could probably prep that screen for this. That all looks very good. It's top of the hour. Let's see if we can get Keynote to work properly. There's our Keynote. We're looking for a green light. Let's get our green light on the screen. Green light. Play. And it's time for a live stream. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2024 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. It's the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are here live, you can interactively vote on your favorite question with us. If you're watching this in the replay, you can also vote along with us. You'll just lock it in yourself and see what the answer happens to be. In the second hour, I will open up the phone lines. We have a lot of questions that you like to submit to me, and those questions can be anything you'd like to ask. It can be about IT, it can be about certifications, it could be about anything in the world that you would like to ask. I don't know that I will answer anything in the world that you would like to ask, but I will certainly take your questions. You can find them all at professormesser.com/QA. In fact, that is a great place for you to go right now. If you are here live, pop open a new browser window and browse over to professormesser.com/QA. And we have an entire system based on a third-party service I use called Vevox. I don't make these names up, people. That's the name of it. Vevox. You don't have to know anything about Vevox. You don't have to know anything about an ID code or any of that nonsense. Simply go to professormesser.com/QA, and I will redirect you to the proper page, to the proper link, so that you will find everything that you need to find for this. Now, if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you on that screen. We refer to this as our rewind question because this is really a question from last month. So some of you may recognize this question if you were here last month or if you've seen the replay, but this is so that we can see if you're able to get into Vevox, if everything is working properly. It's not always working properly. Sometimes we run into issues, and this is a good place to find these out. If you visit professormesser.com/QA, you should see a link there or a question there that asks, a component includes both an M key and a B key. That's a Mike key, a Bravo key. Which of the following would be associated with this design? Is that RAM, CPU cooling, TPM, M.2, or video power? You have a few options available. It could be RAM, CPU cooling, TPM, M.2, or video power. Now, the rules that we use here in the live stream is please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We will instead focus on putting in the answer on the link that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. It's a great place to go to lock in your answer and see if your answer matches what other people are answering. We will come back to this question in just a bit to see if you got the question right. Well, thank you for joining us. We do one of these study groups every month. We would do one for our Core 1 A+, our Core 2 A+, our Network Plus, our Security Plus. So we're doing at least 4 live streams with this Q&A theme every month. You're welcome to join us. You can always find us on our calendar links. That's at professormesser.com/calendar. And of course, all of this is available for replay immediately afterwards on our YouTube channel. You can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. We would love for you to give this a thumbs up, subscribe, and do all those things that help us on these social media sites. It is indeed greatly appreciated. We also have a daily A+ pop quiz question. That pop quiz question is written new every day. So you can find that at professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. Same question, just with a pretty picture. And we also have email that we could send you the question into your email inbox every day. You'll find the links to that on the main page of the Professor Messer website. Also let you know that sometime in this first hour, I'm going to give you instructions on how you could earn a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Now, if you don't have your certification yet, this doesn't apply to you. But for those of you that are already certified and you would like to use a CEU to be able to renew your certification, this is what you will use. So I'll tell you all about the process, the instructions, the things you need to know. Just listen in sometime during this first hour, and you'll hear it as it goes by. The current version of the A+ exams are the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. You have to pass 2 exams to earn your A+ certification. That is the numbers for both of those. The release date on these was April the 20th of 2022, which means that we would expect these exams to retire somewhere around October of 2025. So as we sit here in September of 2024, you have over a year before these exams go away. So if you're here studying right now, you've got the right versions of the exams and you have plenty of time to study for them as we are sitting here right now. The exams themselves are 90 minutes in length. Once that 90 minutes is up, your exam is over. There's the 220-1101, and you need to score a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. The Core 2 exam, which you also need to pass, is a little bit stricter. You need a 700 as a score on the same scale of 100 to 900. And once you pass both of those exams, you are certified as an A+ certified professional for 3 years. And you can, of course, renew the certification so that every 3 years you can continue to have that cert as something you can put on your resume, something you can show as a certificate where you are at work. You don't have to take the exams every 3 years. You can simply renew them. If you wanted to know what comes on these exams, what these questions are about today, and where any of this information is coming from, it's coming from the objectives. Those objectives are free and can be downloaded from the CompTIA website at professormesser.com/objectives. The 1101 exam consists of 5 different domains, or sections, as CompTIA calls them. They are mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware network troubleshooting. So effectively, we learn about mobile devices, networking, and hardware, and all of these things. And then at the last part of these exam objectives, we have to troubleshoot these. So it's a whole process of understanding what these things are, and then understanding how do you fix them when there's a problem. We'll talk about some of those troubleshooting tasks today in this live stream. This live stream video will be available to watch on YouTube immediately afterwards. And of course, we have years of archives that you can go through, all new questions every single month. We also have a audio only version that I produce for people that are traveling, you're in your car, you're working out, you can't really watch a video, or you'd like something that was a little less heavy on the bandwidth. That's a great way to do it. And I distribute these in a podcast format, so you can use any podcast listening program out there. Simply visit professormesser.com/podcast to add this live stream to your favorite podcast listening program. And if you like a streaming service, maybe you're on Spotify, you don't even have to download anything. You simply search for Professor Messer on Spotify, and you'll find us on there as well. It's a great way to keep up with what we're doing. Our A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus live streams are there. About a day after this, almost like magic, you will find that the YouTube video description is updated with timestamps, detailed timestamps of exactly what we've done today. And that is not something that happens automatically. It's not AI. Well, you know it's not AI because it's correct. That's how you're able to tell. And it's correct because my marketing manager, Lori, is watching this and she's putting in these timestamps. Hey, Lori, she's going through this entire process and documenting this for you. And you can go back years to these timestamps and find all of this information. Thank you, Lori, for doing this. I'm sure the folks in the chat room, if you find some value in that, make sure you put comments there, because just as she's watching this probably at 2x speed, she's also watching the replay of the live stream chat go by as well. And that's, of course, on our YouTube video descriptions. When we're not here doing a live stream, you can certainly find us over on Discord, along with a lot of other people who are studying for their A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certifications. It's a fantastic community of folks who have created a way to study virtually at practically any time of the day. If you have a question about anything, there's usually someone there who can answer it. Find us over on our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord, or use the links, the icons at the upper right of our website. It's a great way to keep track of what's going on when we are not doing a live stream. I'm in there. Other folks that have their certifications are in there. Other folks who are studying for their certifications are in there. We even have links where you can start your own study group in real time on our Discord. It's all done automatically and you have complete control over it. Just a nice capability for folks that want an ad hoc study session. Find it at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, and that exam is one that does cost some money to purchase and take. Now, you could, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take your exam, or you could go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher. So you could save money on taking this exam. This is for folks that are in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territories. You can find this at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get a discounted voucher, I will also give you even more things for free. It's my Exam Hacks ebook, an ebook that I wrote with all the tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years of taking these certification exams. And it gives you tips that can help you with the study process and tips that can help you during the exam itself. This is something you cannot buy. It is only available with my success bundles or when you purchase a voucher, something that's a little bit exclusive for you. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was, a component includes both an M key and a B key. Which of the following would be associated with this design? Would it be RAM, CPU cooling, TPM, M.2, or video power? And of course, those of you that went out to professormesser.com/QA have locked in this answer. Let's see what you believe the answer to be. You can see that 64% of you, which I think is a better number than we got last month, say the answer is M.2. That's such a strong number compared to the others that I think we're going to go for that. Of course, that's what that is. The M.2 connection that's on the end. There's different types of connectors that are at the end. We call these little hooks, these little openings that are in the connector, the M key and the B key. This is an M.2 SSD, for example. And you can see that, let me bring up a closer view. There it is. So you can see that these little keys are openings that are in the circuit board itself. There's one that is titled M. That's because that's the name of the opening that is at that specific location on the M.2 interface. And there is a B key. There's one. This particular device supports both an M and a B. Your motherboard will determine what devices are able to plug in. So make sure you check the documentation for your motherboard to know exactly what you will be connecting and that the M.2 device that you are using is compatible with the keys that are on your motherboard. So indeed, the answer was M.2. That's the one we were looking for, and 64% of you chose that one. It would not be a TPM. Trusted platform modules are used generally on the motherboard of a single device to be able to handle some of the cryptography that is important for that specific device. So if you're doing things like BitLocker or any type of full disk encryption, it's using the TPM that is either built into the motherboard or attached as a separate component to your existing motherboard. We also have a RAM component. Now, RAM does have keys associated with it, but it doesn't use something called an M key and it doesn't use something called a B key. The DDR2, the DDR3, DDR4, DDR5, and the later versions of DDR will certainly continue having a very specific set of keys so that you can't plug in DDR3 memory into a DDR2 motherboard. But they aren't named. They're simply that DDR version. So it's a DDR5 keying system or a DDR4 keying system. It's not called an M key or a B key. That's really exclusive to an M.2 interface. And video power has its own set of connectors and a mini and varied set. We have a whole video on power inside of your computer. Only 3% of you chose that one. And CPU cooling has, of course, its own setup with all kinds of fans, liquid cooling. We got passive cooling options. There's lots of ways to cool the inside of your system, but none of them include an M key or a B key. In this case, the answer is M.2, and 64% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, this brings us to the next section, or really the first new question of our exam, or at least our study group today. It's not really an exam, more of a study group, being able to understand what the next things are. But the first new question of a study group, I like to give you a question that is not multiple choice. The question we just did was multiple choice. There was a question and then multiple choices to select from. But when you start your A+ exam, you will get a handful of questions at the very beginning that are not multiple choice. You may be asking yourself, well, if they're not multiple choice, what are they? Well, the answer is they could be anything. CompTIA refers to these as performance-based questions. You'll sometimes see this abbreviated as PBQs, performance-based questions. So these performance-based questions tend to have more of and a set of options available. Maybe it's a fill in the blank. Maybe it puts you at the command prompt of a computer and you have to type things in. Maybe it's a drag and drop question. Maybe it's a matching question. Maybe you have to put things in a particular order. You get the idea. It's anything but multiple choice. So what I like to do is our first new question of a study group, I like to give you a performance-based question. So here is our performance-based question of the day. Now, for those of you that are listening on the podcast, I guess I could apologize now because I don't have anything that can explain what you're seeing on the screen. This is more of a visual daily double, which asks, select the matching connector and the use case. So let me explain to you what I have on the screen. I have 4 images. These are 4 connectors that I have on the screen. And then I have 2 rows. And what I want you to do is for each picture, select one of those options from row A, select one of those options from row B. Row A has 6 different options. Row B has 6 different options. But wait, there's 4 pictures. If you do the math, there will be 2 of these that are left over. This, by the way, is a very common thing that you see on the actual exam. So for those of you listening in, I will tell you what the different options are in each row. The first row is the name of the connector itself. It could be an RJ11, F, local, RJ45, DB9, or subscriber. Those are the different connectors. And then I have some use cases. When do you use these types of connectors? Would it be for external storage, DSL internet, video display, EMI resistance, cable modem, or console configuration? So you've got a number of different options to choose from here. You need to pick one from each row for each one of the videos. So you have this first picture. You'll pick one in row A that is associated with that picture. You'll pick one from row B that is associated with that picture, and then you go to the next one. Now we just have this on as a fill in the blank. So you could probably just choose or type in what it happens to be. Just make a note of what that is, because if you submit these online, you don't get to see the answers anymore. So just keep in mind what you believe that connector to be. And it's more of, I guess it could be a drag and drop. This could be a matching question. You could really have this shown in many different ways on your actual exam. But I think knowing the content is the important part, because quite honestly, with a performance-based question, as long as you know the exam objectives, in my mind, it really doesn't matter how the exams are set up on the screen. If you know the content, you can pretty much answer any type of question. So this is the way to do it. Now, if you think you know the answer, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to answer by following the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. These 4 connectors I chose very specifically. I wanted to give you connectors that were, of course, from the exam objectives. That's important. But all of the answers are also from the exam objectives. I mentioned that there will be 2 answers left over in each row at the end of this, but even those 2 answers come from the exam objectives. So if you notice any type of phrase on here or a description or a use case, and you're not quite sure what that particular reference is, make a note of it, because it comes from your exam objectives and you need to know everything that's on those exam objectives. So if you're looking at this and you're wondering, wait, what's an RJ11 connector? What's an F connector? What's a local connector, et cetera, make sure you make a note of that so that you can go do a little bit more research, because that could show up on your exam. Make sure you are familiar with it. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to answer with the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Be a great way to answer this particular question, and a good way to lock it in to see how these are going to work for you. All of these, by the way, come from the exam objectives themselves, But of course, there are multiple layers to this. And this is something you will commonly see with these types of questions. It's never completely straightforward. There's always an additional piece where you have to layer in different aspects. And normally this is, here's a technology, and then here's how you use that technology. And I think if you follow that all the way through the exam, I think that's a great way to approach almost everything that you're going to run into. Let's see how you did with this question. We will start going through each one of these to see how you did. Let's start with the one on the far left. This black cable, it has this copper connection in the middle of the round connector, and it looks like it's threaded. That's an important consideration when you're looking at this connector. If you are familiar with anything relating to coax television, then you have probably seen an F connector. The F doesn't actually stand for anything. I finally did the research on this one. There was a connector, a B connector, a C connector. You see where this is going. A D connector, an E connector, and there's an F connector. So it was just the next letter they came to. And of all of these different connectors that went on after that, G, H, I, J, they had a lot of connectors at the time. And it just happened to be that everybody sort of centered on that one. And it kind of became the default that we used for practically anything. Now, if you're bringing in one of these connectors for your network, then most likely you are plugging in a cable modem. This is where you would have coax cable from your cable company, and you're plugging in that. Of course, on that cable is probably a video signal, usually digital, sometimes analog. There are signals on that cable probably for voice over IP, because many of these companies are also providing phone service. And of course, they're also providing internet connectivity, and that's how we would use an F connector with a coaxial cable. The next one on our list is this funny looking connector that is very colorful. It's a bright blue color, has this yellow color on the back where the fiber happens to be. That fiber connector, and the specific fiber connector that we've listed here, is a little bit of a square type connector. This is an SC connector. We refer to this as a subscriber connector. The SC connectors, very common ones to find on fiber-based equipment. They're very easy to use because these are actually two separate fibers that are connected together with a piece that holds them in place. And in fact, you can even see one side says A, one side says B, so you can keep track of which is which. There's a key on the top of it. See the little nub sticking out of the top? That ensures that you can only plug it in one way. You can't plug it in upside down, for example. On the other side, of course, you'll probably have the same thing, except the sides are switched, B and A, because you have the send go to the receive and the receive go to the send. And that's not always the case, but many cases that certainly is. Now, when would you use a subscriber connector? Well, based on the use cases that were available, there was really only one that fit the best. And the one that fit the best is EMI resistance. If you need electromagnetic interference resistance, this is something that is very useful. You just get rid of anything that is conductive. Get rid of all of your copper. And now suddenly EMI doesn't matter to you. Light is very resistant to EMI. So putting your light inside of a fiber means that you don't have to worry about maybe equipment. Maybe you're running network connections in a big manufacturing facility, and there's tons of equipment and power and lots of EMI. Well, you just run fiber. Then you don't have to worry about it. So those were the second one. It was a subscriber connector. Sometimes people call this the square connector because it looks like a square at the end of it. See how it's squared off at the end? That is probably not the best description, but it's one that might stick with you. Another one to think about. The third one on our list is this little fella right here. That connection is an RJ11 connector. It looks very similar to the RJ45. This is a registered jack Model 11. That's what that stands for. This registered jack Model 11 has 4 different places that you could plug in wire. Technically, an RJ11 is only using 2 wires of those 4 connectors that are inside. So you have 4 places that you could put things. The RJ11 technically is 2 wires inside of that. When you see 4 wires inside of that, what is that, an RJ14? Something like that? We still call it RJ11. We still do. And very often we will either not use those extra wires or we will use them for a separate connection. Sometimes people run multiple analog voice connections over an RJ11 that has 4 wires inside of it. 2 wires for one, 2 wires for the other. 2 wires. So simple back in the day with analog telephone. You only needed 2 wires. Very different in our world of Ethernet connectivity today. If you're running an RJ11 connection, you may be thinking, I don't have an analog phone anymore. We don't really use those much in our corporate environments. We really don't use them very much at home anymore either. So if you're running an RJ11 connector, you're probably plugging in a DSL connection, another type of modem connection that allows you to connect to the internet over a digital line. This is taking that old analog connection that we used to have with our voice connection and also running digital signals over the same wires, which means you don't have to run new wires inside of your house if you already have RJ11 there. Simply plug in a DSL modem, and now you're up and running with that. There we go. We've got Mike in the chat room who says, oh, it's fax machines. They use RJ11. They do. Analog voice uses that. And what a modern reference you've given us, Mike, with the fax machines. Now, the weird part about this, Mike's not too far off. Fax machines are still being used everywhere. They are indeed the bane of most people's existence. So we do use RJ11 for that as well. But fax machines wasn't our option here. In this case, DSL internet would be the best use case. And the last connector that we have here is this connector here that has this larger connector at the end with what appear to be 9 different interfaces, 9 different wires that could potentially be connected there. And because of that, this is a DB9 connector. The D-shaped connection that is on this, it looks sort of like a D if you were going to look at it. The size of this connector is the B size. That's how this is. The B comes from that. D is the shape of it. The B is the size of it. And the 9 refers to the number of pins that could potentially be wired for that particular connection. DB9 connector. Not one that you often run into any longer, but you will find lots of legacy equipment that is still connecting to devices with a DB9, usually serial type connections. These days we use USB. That is our newest serial type connection, but occasionally you will need to plug into older equipment, older servers, older routers, switches, firewalls, and those types of things. So make sure you have a look at those. They can certainly help you quite a bit. And if you're plugging into a device that has a DB9 connection, then you're probably doing some type of configuration from a console. You're plugging in through a serial connection and manually configuring that device. Maybe it's never been connected to the network and you need to give it an IP address. How do you do that if you've never connected it to the network? You connect to the console port. And the console port often is a serial connection, and often it is a DB9 connection as well. So those are the 4 different images we found: an F connector, a subscriber connector, or SC, an RJ11 connector, and a DB9 connector. They're used for cable modem for the F connector, EMI resistance for fiber connection, DSL internet for the RJ11, and console connection for the DB9. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of things that you can focus on and things that you can think about when it comes to connections. This is a very common way to present these on the exam. And it's a common way that you could maybe think about how these are used. When you see any technology on the A+ exam objectives, you should look at that technology and then try to figure out, what do you do with that? So it's more than just knowing a port number and a protocol. You have to know what that port number and what that protocol do for you. And the same thing applies for connections. Same thing applies for operating systems. Same thing applies for networking and security and all of these other things that are on the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those, because certainly they could come up in your exam as well. That was our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you a few things to think about regarding connectors. Let's now shift gears back to a multiple choice question. This next question on our list asks, a company is planning to purchase and build a cloud infrastructure in their company data center. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Would it be private, SaaS, hybrid, community, or PaaS? So a company is planning to purchase and build a cloud infrastructure in their company data center. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Would it be private, SaaS or SaaS, hybrid, community, PaaS or PaaS. Now, if you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what this one happens to be. These multiple choice questions, you at least have a chance of getting these right, even if you don't know the answer, because you can take a guess. And if you are working on your exam and you're planning to sit down and take this exam anytime soon, one of my biggest recommendations to you is to always answer the questions. Never leave a question blank. So before you submit your exam, make sure you've at least taken a best guess before submitting your exam. You might be lucky and get the question right, even if you are not completely sure what the answer is for that particular question. We'll tell you in a moment where this question comes from, where these topics are from, and as usual, everything that's on this question and all of the answers that are presented do come directly from your CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with all of them. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a company is planning to purchase and build a cloud infrastructure in their company data center. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Would it be private, SaaS, hybrid, community, or PaaS? Let's see what you chose. We can see that 63% of you believe this is a private deployment. 10% say hybrid, 9% say SaaS, and 14% say PaaS. It's almost a three-way tie for second place. And then in last place, community only got 1% of the vote. Cloud infrastructures are, of course, something you need to know for your exam. If you are going out to Amazon, or you're going out to Rackspace, or you're going out to Microsoft, and you're using their public cloud to be able to deploy an application, build out some type of infrastructure, that is a public configuration. In fact, anyone in the internet can connect to your server potentially, because it is being hosted at a public cloud provider. But you could, of course, take the same technology that's being used on that public cloud and put it in your own data center. This does defeat a lot of the advantages you have of a public cloud, because you have to buy your own equipment for this, but you have complete control over it when you do that. And if you were to buy your own equipment and deploy your own cloud infrastructure, we refer to that as a private infrastructure, a private deployment. This is when other people are not able to connect to this. It's your deployment. Nobody else has the ability to use that or to even see it on the internet, because it is a private configuration. If this was at Amazon, if this was at Microsoft, if this was at one of the many different cloud providers that are out there, we would refer to this as a public deployment, where you don't have control of the hardware, you don't have control of the management, you don't have control, or at least not complete control, of the data security when it's on a public, which is why a lot of companies prefer the private. So they get the advantages of using the cloud-based infrastructure to be able to quickly build out and deploy applications, but they also have the advantage of keeping everything private and secure in their own data center. The downside, of course, is you have to pay for it. You have to have your own data center. You have to pay for the cooling. You have to pay for the support. But a lot of organizations already have their own data center. They're not willing to put these applications on the public cloud. They prefer keeping it private. And there may be some very good reasons to do that, not just from a security and networking perspective, but perhaps from a cost perspective as well. Maybe it's better to keep all of that data inside of your company rather than putting it somewhere out on the internet. There are other ways to have cloud deployments. If you are mixing both public and private, we refer to that as hybrid. And if you're working with an organization or group of organizations that has a similar set of goals and objectives, and you're pooling all of your resources together to create your own cloud amongst all of you, then you've got a community configuration. So that covers a number of the options that we saw here. Private clearly is the answer we were looking for. Hybrid, we've already seen that's a combination of public and private, not what we were looking at in this particular question. And community, only 1% of you chose that one, but you can see now why community would not be the correct choice either. Now, software as a service and platform as a service are a method of deploying applications into a cloud, not deploying the cloud itself. So although these are important technologies and things you need to know for your exam, with this question where we are deploying a cloud infrastructure, we would not be deploying a SaaS or a PaaS infrastructure. We are instead referring to these other terms of private, hybrid, community, etc. We've got many choices there to choose from. In this case, the answer we were looking for was indeed private, and 63% of you chose that one. Let's do another multiple choice question. Next one on our list is this one that asks, a user is opened a ticket complaining of a popping noise and a black screen on their desktop computer. Which of the following would be the most likely cause for this ticket? Would this be missing heatsink, blown capacitor, blocked fan, faulty RAM, or hard drive failure? Got a few choices there. A user is opened a ticket complaining of a popping noise and a black screen on their desktop computer. Which of the following would be the most likely cause for this ticket? Are we missing a heatsink, blown capacitor, blocked fan, faulty RAM, or hard drive failure? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Maybe some of you have run across this particular problem before. I have a lot of people locking in their answers quickly on this one, which makes me think that a number of you are very familiar with what this could possibly be. See if you happen to know by locking in your answer at the link at professormesser.com/QA. See if you know what this one is. We have some more people who have joined, so I'm going to let them lock in their answer as we go through this. And again, all of these answers are things to troubleshoot and know about for the exam that you will be taking. So make sure you are familiar with it. Let's see how we did with this one. The question again asks, a user has opened a ticket complaining of a popping noise and a black screen on their desktop computer. Which of the following would be the most likely cause for this ticket? Are we missing a heatsink? Is it a blown capacitor? Do we have a blocked fan? Is there faulty RAM? Or did we have a hard drive failure? Let's stop the poll and see what you chose. And the 67% of you chose blown capacitor. 21% say this is a hard drive failure. 8% say faulty RAM. 3% say blocked fan. And nobody said missing heatsink. Well, that makes me sad because I like to at least have something in there to hook you in. Nobody was thrown at all by this. 67% of you say blown capacitor. And whenever you hear noises in your computer, things that are clicking, humming, popping, you need to know what those noises are associated with. If you're a clicking noise, it's probably a fan. There's something blocking the fan that's spinning around. You're hearing click, 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 click. Sometimes the clicking is associated with a bad hard drive that may be inside the system. Sometimes it's a scraping noise for the hard drive. None of these are good, by the way. If you're wondering, oh, well, that sounds okay. That clicking noise is fine, right? No, it should never click. It should be a nice humming, a low hum, if you even hear it at all. No noise is good noise. So if you're hearing anything, it could be a problem. Now, capacitors are these are very large capacitors. There are many different styles and sizes of capacitors. The ones that I'm showing on the screen here are the much larger components, but there are also some surface mount capacitors that are very small that you could find on a system. They're very tiny ones down here. You can kind of see a few of those on this particular motherboard. But what you're looking for in these capacitors is how they are looking. In fact, you can see on this one, let me zoom up. See how it's bulged out a little bit on the top? It's not flat on the top. That leads me to believe maybe that capacitor is not doing very well. You can, of course, with the proper equipment, a multimeter and other devices, be able to measure how well this capacitor is working. But in this case, that is not a good looking capacitor. Let's look at another one. Ooh, that one's a little bulging out too. Might be a little concerned over that one. But this one is not one that made any noises. It doesn't look like anything popped. It doesn't look like anything's bad in that one. It is very subtle. It is very, very difficult. You have to look really closely, but you can see it's a lot different than the one that's just to the right where it's completely flat. Now, if you're looking at a capacitor where you've heard a popping noise, you probably have something like this, where it did have a cover on it, and this is what's inside of that capacitor. That cover blew right off. This capacitor definitely had a little bit of a problem. And so when you hear those popping noises or you're seeing the smoke escape the computer, we all know, of course, the smoke is the thing that keeps the computer running. And if the smoke gets out, the computer doesn't work anymore. So in this particular case, we can open up our computer and say, yeah, that one there's our problem. I found the issue. We know where the problem is. It's that one right there. So that is definitely a capacitor that has seen some better days. And that was the popping noise that we really found. By the way, on that picture, not the only thing we should be concerned with. That one doesn't look good. That one doesn't look good. That one does not look good. This one is, something has happened to this one. It's actually been damaged. And then maybe this one's okay. We won't know until we put some meters on it and really check the values of the capacitors. But that is indeed the answer we were looking for. A blown capacitor is the one that had the problem there. It was not a hard drive failure in this case. Now, why would it not be a hard drive failure? Popping noises would certainly indicate some type of issue with a component. The one key here is that we've got a black screen. And a hard drive failing would almost always present some type of error message on the screen telling you that we've had a hard drive failure. We're not able to read anything from the drive. The drive was not found. The drive is not responding. There's some type of error we would get trying to access that component. If we have a popping noise and the screen goes black, then we probably lost a capacitor in our power supply or a capacitor on the motherboard that allows the system to even work at all. It's a black screen. It's nothing. We see nothing on the screen, probably a capacitor. Something went bad with the power. And it was, if it's a popping noise like that one, probably related to that capacitor. So if you answered blown capacitor, got that one absolutely right. Hard drive failure, we've explained why it would not be that. Faulty RAM would also present some type of error on the screen. A blue screen error may present some type of memory problem. We've ran memory diagnostics. It would show us there was faulty RAM. But bad RAM generally doesn't make noise. It is a solid state device. RAM is, there's no moving parts. That's what the solid state device is. So when we have faulty RAM, it usually manifests itself with some type of error message on the screen or failure of the operating system, not a popping noise. We also have a blocked fan. Often that is one that simply increases the heat inside of your computer. It doesn't really make noise. Or if something is actually touching the fan blades as they're going by, you'll hear a clicking noise. Just like we would put the cards, the playing cards in the spokes of your bicycle, same idea. Something is now in the way. Maybe a wire has gotten in the way of the fan and you hear click, 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 click. That would drive me crazy. So you got to find that, open the system up, remove the wire, move it out of the way, get it out of the way of the fan, clean the fan out and you're in good shape, but would not be popping noise on a black screen because of a blocked fan. And then a missing heatsink would certainly affect the ability of the system to properly disseminate the heat, or dissipate would be a better term there, wouldn't it? Having any method so that cool air could come across and remove the heat from the system and get it out of that computer would be a missing heatsink. Nobody even thought it was that. Might have a popping noise when it, not really a popping, but kind of a clunking noise. If you ever had a system that a heatsink fell off and you turn the system around, you hear clunk, 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 clunk. Clunk, 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 clunk. You hear something falling on the inside of your system that sounds metallic. That's probably a heatsink. Somebody either did not fasten it well, didn't glue it down properly, and now it's popping around inside of your system. I've shipped so many systems so many times. When they show up, there's usually something that has popped off or come off the system during the shipping process. So it's just the same. Take a piece of metal, throw it inside of your computer and shake it around. That's what a heatsink sounds like. So in this case, anything that's a popping noise and a black screen, probably a blown capacitor, and 67% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, as you've already seen, there is so much you need to know for both your Core 1 and your Core 2 exams. If you look through every single one of my videos, you will find that there's information just in Core 1 on the hardware. We have to know about these connectors. There's cloud-based technologies. There's networking inside of this. So many different things. And we haven't even gotten to the Core 2 yet, which of course has operating systems, security, and troubleshooting, all of those. Of course, if you were to watch every single video, 137 videos to make this all work for you, to give you everything you need to know for this A+ exam, 19 hours of content. And it would be great if you were able to go through all of that content, but not everybody has that kind of time. Or maybe you just want some way that you could have everything summarized in one view for you. Well, I've already done this for you with my course notes. This is a PDF document or a physical book that I have written that has all of the information that you would normally find in the exam itself. So laptop information, hardware details, connectors, port numbers, all of the important graphics, all of the important charts, all of the important tables, all of the text that's from these videos, it's in this set of course notes. And not only do you have this as a single digital PDF that you could download and put on all of your devices, I also make a physical version of the course notes. It's of course identical to the PDF that you would get, but it's one that you could take around with you. Now, if you get the physical version, and as you can see, it's in full color, high quality pages. We're not messing around here. We're giving you high quality training materials. This is also something that includes the digital version for free. So while you're waiting for this to be shipped to you, you can immediately download the digital versions and load them on your systems as well. Those are my course notes. We have them available for the Core 1, the Core 2 exams, and for all of the training courses that we have. It's a great way to support what we do here at Messer Studios. And if you want to be able to use these, not just for your A+ exam, but be able to maybe include practice exams with this, they're all on my website. You can learn more about it. Go to professormesser.com/1101notes if you'd like to learn more about what's inside of these and maybe some things that you could do to reduce the time it takes to be able to learn everything you need to be able to take this exam. Let's now do some more questions. Next question on our list is this one that asks, a user is wirelessly connecting their phone to a rental car when traveling. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Would this be A, hotspot, NFC, Lightning, Bluetooth, or USB-C? A user is wirelessly connecting their phone to a rental car when traveling. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it hotspot, NFC, Lightning, Bluetooth, USB-C? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what you would use for this. I have a story about this one. We'll have to talk about this when we're done here. A lot of you locking in your questions, your answer for this question very quickly. I'm wondering, whenever that happens, I'm always wondering, do we all know what the answer is? Or is this one where maybe we don't know what the answer is for both of these? So this is a great way to do it. See if you happen to know the answer for this one by locking in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. This is one that's a fundamental for being able to use this. So make sure you go through the list and make sure you choose very carefully. The question again asks, a user is wirelessly connecting their phone to a rental car when traveling. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is this hotspot, NFC, Lightning, Bluetooth, or USB-C? Now, what did you choose for this one? All of you that have submitted these very, very quickly. Almost 100% of you, 95% of you say the answer is Bluetooth. Bluetooth is the answer that you gave. 4% of you say, no, that's a hotspot. That is a hot spot. It's not, but only 4% of you chose that one. Wouldn't it be crazy if the 4% of you got that one right? Because NFC got 0%, Lightning got 0%, and USB-C got effectively 0%. We really did have almost everyone choose Bluetooth as the option. Well, of course you did, because that was the answer we were looking for. If you need to send information from one device to another wirelessly, especially with your mobile device, then you need to use Bluetooth. Bluetooth is called a PAN, a personal area network. It's one that allows you to network devices together in your personal area, somewhere around. Usually it's just a few meters in length to be able to use Bluetooth. Make that happen. Bluetooth is very commonly used for our mobile devices, but we use Bluetooth for other things as well. The keyboard that I'm using connected with Bluetooth. There's no wires here. It's all Bluetooth connected. Very different than the mouse I'm using, which has a wire connected to it. They have a newer version of this mouse that does have a Bluetooth connection. Maybe I need to upgrade. So not only are we using this for our mobile devices, we're using it for our desktop computers at times as well. So a great way to take advantage of this type of technology. Now, if you're in a rental car, which was this question, how would this have anything to do with Bluetooth? Well, you could, of course, connect in your cars these days. You're very commonly connecting your mobile device to the car's entertainment system or radio system almost always over Bluetooth. There are other options in most cars that allow you to connect through a wired connection, and you would probably use some type of USB, sometimes a Lightning connection. If you have an older phone that's an iOS type phone from Apple, you can use many of these to be able to do that. But if anything, Lightning is commonly used in a car, Bluetooth commonly used in a car, USB-C commonly used in a car, but hotspot describes many people using your mobile device as an internet connection. So that would not really apply to connecting your phone to the rental car and traveling. And NFC, near field communication, is a way to communicate. Very often, if you're using your mobile device, your watch, your phone, and you're paying for things when you're checking out at a store, that is using NFC as the networking connection between you and that point of sale terminal. In this case, obviously, Bluetooth is what you would choose. Now, I went on a trip recently. I rented a car, hopped in the car. Here's one of the things you will find. If you ever are renting a car, you should immediately, before you connect to the car, have a look at what's in the current radio. You will see all of the phones that were connected to this car previously, because the cars are not going to delete this by default. So that's pretty interesting. You'll start to see people's names pop up. In some cases, you can even see a history of what they selected from their mobile phone. So I've been in rental cars where I've seen exactly where they took this car. I can see the name of the place that they put into their GPS. Sometimes they're very interesting places that people are going in their cars, but that seems in some cases probably even private information. You need to be very careful about the information you have in your car. So I would highly recommend, if you are renting a car, one of the things when you first connect is it will ask you, oh, should we take all of your contacts and put it into our car so that you can easily make a call? If this is a rental car, your answer should be no. Otherwise, the next person in your rental car gets to see all of your contacts, which probably is not what you were shooting for. Bluetooth is a great technology for doing this, though. It's seamless, it's fast, it's very easy to use, and often can be a very safe way to use your mobile device in a rental car. But be very careful about sharing your data. Make sure you delete all of that information when you turn the car in. That is absolutely the right answer if you chose Bluetooth. 95% of you chose that one. You got it absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU, Continuing Education Unit. The way that you would receive that email is you have to follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, please put September 2024 Core 1 in any order, just so I know where this came from. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Bluetooth, USB-C, Lightning. Those are super secret code words of the month. Again, what you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, in the subject line, put September 2024 Core 1 or something close to that. And then the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, Bluetooth, USB-C, Lightning. Those are the things you need to do. Do not send me an email directly that does not use that process. That means you didn't follow the directions and you will not earn your CEU. Sad. I'll just have to delete. There it goes. You don't earn the CEU. So make sure you follow those instructions and you will, of course, receive an email from me sometime in the next week or so. Usually it takes me a number of days to be able to send these out. Sometimes it happens very quickly. Sometimes it does not happen very quickly. So it just depends on the chaos that's in my world at that particular moment. Sometimes I can get these out to you. So when you receive the email, you can think, oh, it must be a good day. It must be an okay day for Professor Messer, who was able to get all of these out and running. Let's do another question. Chaos is a part of life. You just have to know how to handle it. You're not going to be able to avoid it. You just have to know how to deal with it. That's the real secret to life, I think. Next question asks this. A company is connecting two locations in the same city over a high-speed Ethernet link. Which of the following would best describe this network type? Would it be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN? This is one with a lot of ands in it. A company is connecting two locations in the same city over a high-speed Ethernet link. Which of the following would best describe this network type? Would it be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN? That would be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN. Dude. See if you know the answer to these. Of course, again, didn't make these up. These all came from the exam objectives. You have to know what all of these are. You should be able to point to any one of them and know what the answers are. Should be a good way to do it. If you don't know any of them, make sure you make a note. Be able to work through them. Should be a good one to work through and figure out. But make sure you know what these happen to be. You should be able to look at all of these technologies and know when they're used. How are they used? How are they deployed? In what situations would you use these? In what scenarios would one be better than the other? If you can do that and explain it to yourself or to someone else, then I think you will be in very good shape for your exam. It's a good way to study for your exam. See if you happen to know what it happens to be. See which ones are there. Let's see if you know. A lot of people answered this one quickly too, which makes me wonder if we happen to know this one really well. The question again asks, a company is connecting two locations in the same city over a high-speed Ethernet link. Which of the following would best describe this network type? Would it be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN? Dude, the answer, we already did that joke. The answer is, again, big numbers, 60%, really just over half, good numbers, say MAN, M-A-N. We have 17% that say the answer is WLAN, and then we have 13% that say WAN. We have 8% that say LAN, and 0% say SAN. I don't know how it sounded to you, but in my head, it's all the same word now. They're just blending together as we step through them. Well, if you are in the same city and you're connecting two locations in the same city, then you are probably over a metropolitan area. And we like to refer to these as a metropolitan area network. Metropolitan area networks are common if you're in the same geographical location, or generally the same geographical location. So the areas that are within your city or within your county, maybe, you could probably consider to be a metropolitan area network. Metropolitan area networks it's an interesting thing to be able to deploy these if you have both locations in the same area, because there are usually rules and regulations around what companies are able to provide you with wide area or connectivity services within a particular geography. And when you start working through these challenges with what is allowed and what is not allowed, if you can keep everything in the same geographical area, then you can probably use the same LEC, the local exchange carrier, the LEC. And it makes it much easier to be able to manage, control, the people locally. You don't have to go to a third party that's outside of the area where you happen to be. It's a very easy way to maintain this and a very convenient way to connect these different sites together. Now, once you get past a certain geography, then your local exchange carrier probably is not covering networks in that particular area. So you probably have to go to a third party, and then it turns into a wide area network at that point. But if you are within the same city, the same county, or the same geographic area, you're probably using a metropolitan area network. Sometimes governments will do this. They'll put their own fiber into the ground. So this is because the government has right of way. If you wanted to put your own cables into the ground, you've got to go to the government and get permission to put your own cables or fibers into the ground. But the government doesn't have to ask permissions for themselves. They can simply put a trench in the ground, put a pipe in there, stick some fiber in the connection, and they can connect all of their government sites together over their own private fiber if that's what they'd like to do. And in many organizations, many governments, this is a great way to connect their sites together. You don't have monthly charges to the taxpayers for the wide area network connectivity. There may be a break even for maintenance and making sure these systems stay up and running and making sure that if there's any problems, they're fixed. mean, there's a balancing act there, but it's certainly something that's very common when you start looking at organizations. So again, the great way to set up a metropolitan area network. And in fact, that was the right answer. 60% of you did get that one right. It is a metropolitan because these are two locations in the same city, and it's a high-speed Ethernet link. This implies, of course, that that is a wired connection because it is Ethernet that we have on that. Now, why would it not be WLAN? W here in this case for a local area network, the W is wireless local area network. And here in this particular case, we're connecting over a high-speed Ethernet link. So a wireless local area network does not apply here. So therefore, we would not choose a WLAN. Why would it not be a WAN, a wide area network? Well, that's because they're in the same city. And generally speaking, it's only a wide area network once you are outside the realm of your local exchange carrier. When you leave your local city, if you go into a different county, if you go into a different state, if you go into a different country, that is a wide area network. So that would obviously not be two locations in the same city. And we have local area networks are a network that is effectively in your same building, or at least somewhere close to where you happen to be. It's local to you. In the world of locality, we are talking about you're walking into a building. All of the network that is in the building where you are is a local area network. When you walk outside the building, you're no longer local to that network. That is the reference point. If you want to have everything relative, it's relative to that building and where it happens to be. And the last one is a storage area network. Doesn't really describe the same thing these others are describing. These others are describing a type of connectivity to a remote site. A storage area network describes a bunch of storage and that you're connecting to it over the network. It has nothing to do with a distance. It really doesn't have to do with location. Storage area network is referring to the type of data that you are connecting to, which in this case would be a storage array of some kind. So there are some terms here we did not use. We did not use campus area network. So there's others that are in the list for your exam objectives you need to know about. Those were the ones I wanted to put in here that would be most important for us to know for this question. And you should certainly focus on these if you're studying for your exam. So if you answered man, dude, 60% of you got that right. Brother, sister, man, to be able to make that work. It is a metropolitan area network, and that is the correct answer. Well done with that one. Well, I know that we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another question. I've got one for you. This question, though, a little bit different than the style we're doing before. Same thing applies, though. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. But I've got a question for you that I just pulled right out of my practice exams book. If you've not seen my practice exams book, this is a book that I have written questions that are specifically written to have the same style, the same tone, the same structure as actual exam questions. Something that might help you if you're planning to study for your exam. The reason I wrote these is because I went around the internet and I noticed there were not a lot of great quality questions on the internet. In fact, there's very few great quality questions on the internet. And I will argue that perhaps there are very few high quality questions that are sold on the internet. And I don't think that's probably something we're hoping for either. We would like questions that have been specifically written with the same objectives in mind for the exam that we are studying for. They are also questions that are written in the same style, the same tone, the same voice as the exam questions. And it's questions that are both multiple choice and performance-based questions. These are my practice exams. And of course, I have the physical book and the digital PDF that you could choose for this as well. So I have for you a question from my practice exams book. This is a question A43. It's in the first set of 90 questions on page 15. And the question asks, a system administrator is using a maintenance kit on a network-connected laser printer. Which of the following should be the last step when performing this maintenance? Should we examine the feed rollers, wait until the fuser unit cools down and replace it, reset the page counter, or replace the power cord? Now, in this book, because it is a book, you can forward through to page 31. We're on page 15. You can go to page 31 and just view what the answer happens to be, A, B, C, or D. I also have a page that has detailed answers. This is on page 78. Now, if you've ever worked with a PDF, the last thing you want to be doing is sliding through your tablet, trying to find page 78, or scrolling with the mouse wheel, trying to get to page 78. That's a little bit cumbersome. You could, of course, because this is a PDF, you could also annotate this. So if you wanted to make a note of things on the screen, use your stylus, be able to do that, you could. And when you're ready to look at the answer, let's say we wanted to go to the details, instead of scrolling to page 78, this is actually a hot link. So I'm just going to click the details. See how it turns into the hand? And it takes me to page 78, where it has the question, has the answers, and it tells me the correct answer is C, reset the page counter. That was the answer for this particular question. And for every question in this book, I will give you an explanation on why that right answer was indeed correct, so that you can get some feedback on, did I choose the right one? Oh, I did. Yep, I can qualify that what I was thinking is the same thing that this question was thinking. So we're synced up perfectly. One of the problems I have with a lot of questions online, though, is I get a lot of the questions wrong. And I want to know, why did I get the question wrong? I feel like there's an opportunity to learn more from that. So if I want to close that circle and be able to really learn, why don't we take every wrong answer and document why all the wrong answers are wrong? Because then I can actually learn something from this entire process. In fact, I'll even tell you, if you have this set of practice exams and you get the question right, I highly recommend you read through the wrong answers, because the question you get on your exam might cover these topics that are covered as part of the wrong answers. So something else to consider. So examining the feed rollers, why was that the wrong answer? I explain it fully. Wait until the fuser unit cools down. Why was that the wrong answer? There's the answer. Replace the power cord. Why would I do that? Well, I tell you, you would not. You really would not commonly replace the power cord. Now, if you've read through this question and you don't even understand these terms, you don't even understand what's being asked of you, I have a video that can help you. And at the very bottom of this screen, there's a link to that video. This is from the 2201101 course. Objective 3.7 is where this came from. And the name of the video is Laser Printer Maintenance. This is a hot link also. You can click on that. Takes you right to the video. If you have this in the physical form, you obviously can't click on it, but you can use your phone with the QR code and go straight to the video from there, or type it in yourself. Either way. And once you're done, this is a PDF. There's a back button. Did you know your PDF has a back button? Most do. You can click that back button. It takes us to where we started, and we can go to the next question that's on our list. Those are my practice exams. If you think this is something that might help you for your exam studies, you can check it out at professormesser.com/core1pe, or simply follow the menus that are at the top of the Professor Messer website. Go to the hamburger menu, choose the Core 1, and you'll see the practice exams are listed in there. Just another question that can help you with your studies. Maybe that'll give you an idea of how you can work through the questions and the answers for your A+ exam. Now, I mentioned earlier that all of the information we covered today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. You should get your hands on these. They are free. They are full of information. You can find them at professormesser.com/objectives. In fact, here are the objectives. I have them right here. They list out for you everything you need to know. Look at all this information here. I've annotated this one already. Look at all of the details they give you. There are a lot of people, a lot of organizations that offer certifications, Microsoft, Cisco, Amazon, and other organizations. None of them provide this level of detail. So if you're working through your A+, Network+, Security+, or any of the CompTIA exams, make sure you take advantage of this. They're almost handing you exactly what you need. In fact, they are. They're handing you exactly what you need to know, because they very rarely deviate, if ever, from this list. Which means if you know everything that's in the exam objectives, then you're going to pass this exam. So this is a great checklist, and it's free. Make sure you grab it from the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month for Core 1. We do another one for Core 2. We do another one for Network+. We do another one for Security+. And we have our next A+ study group 2 days from now on September the 12th. So come on back for that. We also have in September our Network+ and Security+ study groups. I don't have them on the screen here. In October, we've already set dates for our A+ study groups, one on the 8th and one on the 10th. We've got a Network+ on October the 16th, October the 23rd. the year is going very, very, very quickly at this point. So these times can sometimes change. These dates can sometimes be moved around. Make sure you're always checking in with the calendar. I always update the calendar immediately. I had to move the Network Plus for next week. I had to move it a day. And I did that earlier in the week. So some of you may not even seen that yet, but it's always updated on the calendar. Make sure you go to professormesser.com/calendar. I also update the calendar that is in our Discord. We have an events channel in our Discord. So both of those I update at the same time so that you always know when the next live event is going to be. There's no question at all to be able to know exactly when that is. And you can see on the calendar that the next A+ study group, we'd love for you to come back in a couple of days for our Core 2 study group on September the 12th. Well, we are past an hour of time. You believe that? That went by pretty quick. But there's even more to come. I'm going to take your questions from the chat that you can submit at any time with the professormesser.com/QA link. You can put your questions in there and we'll go through those questions in our after show coming up immediately after this. Stick around for that. Don't forget about your discounted vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers for that. We have our course notes, our practice exams, and if you buy them together, there's a little bit of a cost benefit, a little bit of a discount. Go to professormesser.com/1101success. And of course, if you're looking for us online, you can check on Discord, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and other places as well by typing in professormesser.com/ the name of that site. For example, if you liked this video and you think, I would love to give this a thumbs up, I would love to subscribe to this channel, you would go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Just an example. I'm just saying that's how it would work. Well, stick around for our after show. We got a lot more coming up, all the questions that you have and much more. Thanks for joining us in this first hour, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, I'm going to take a sip. And I'm going to bring us back. Are we back? There we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show. Now it's the part where I answer your questions. This is more of a casual, completely unrehearsed, not planned at all section of the live stream. And I think that adds a little bit of danger, just a little bit, maybe not danger is the right word. Maybe it's dangerous, but for me, that's kind of how it works. So my plan is I will change things around on my screen. If you will, one moment, bear with me. And you'll notice if you look in professormesser.com/QA, that's not it. But if you were to do this in the right place, you would see this. It says you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution may not appear immediately. It will not appear immediately. So it's not one of those situations. So I will eventually get to this, but I'm the one sifting through these. There's nobody else here. There's not a crew of people hanging out, taking care of the back office stuff, they're not screening calls. They're not looking through it's me. So for those of you that got thrown out of the chat, for those of you that are wondering why your messages are being filled, that's me. I'm the one doing it. So there's only one person to blame here. And I can deflect that to someone else, I guess. That's the idea. So I'm going to go through the process of looking at these questions. Here we go. There we go. Now I can sift through the Q&A that you are submitting, and we'll see what other questions you have. Now, this is for questions really about anything. So you could be asking questions about the Core 1 exam, the Core 2 exam, Network Plus, Security Plus, or certifications in general. It could be about information technology. It could be about something from the news. It could be about something that happened this past week. It could be about topics that are covered in other certification exams. It could be just about technology. It could be about what games I'm playing right now. It could be about my daily process of whatever I'm doing these days. It could be about anything, but you're welcome to submit anything into that list. You can submit them at professormesser.com/QA. Let's start with a question about form and how you would study for this particular exam and what's important when you're studying for this exam. It's from Chris, who asks, can I pass this exam without any hands-on? And It's difficult to answer questions like this because the answer is sure, you could potentially, possibly pass this exam without hands-on. You probably would do better if you did have some hands-on though. This is one of the common things I get is how can I do the least amount of work to be able to earn the certification? It's a common question. And it's a logical question. It's a human question. It's one that we don't want to overcommit. We don't want to overwork ourselves to be able to do this. But the real question is going to be, do you think the hands-on will help you? Have you gone through the commands that are in this Core 1 or Core 2 exam, and you're thinking, I didn't really get what the trace route command was doing for me. I don't really understand netstat very well based on the information I saw in the video. Well, why not do some hands-on? Why not pop open a command prompt on your own computer and run a netstat and run the traceroute command and view it yourself and look at the man pages for it and look at the online documentation and look at the Wikipedia article and see if someone else has done another video of it, or break down this in whatever fashion you think makes sense for you. Some people don't need any hands-on. They've been in this industry for a long time. They've worked with these commands for a long time. They sort of understand, even if they don't know that command, they know how other commands work. So they understand the process. And the very interesting part of this and working through it is that you really do need to understand what's happening behind the scenes to really get the total view of what's really going on. And I give you a little bit of insight into that into my videos, especially the ones dealing with these commands. If you've watched that video, you've seen me on the screen run each of these commands, and we're watching it run interactively on the screen. That's something you can do for yourself, and you can do it with the same commands I'm using in the video. I built the videos that way. So you could pop open your own screen, your own command prompt, and be able to run the exact same command and be able to see the results that you get. These are a process that I always say 4 things are really where you should focus. If you wanted the best possible chance for passing, if you wanted the best possible group of study materials, you need 4 things. One is a great video course. I don't know where you're going to get one of those, but you should probably find one of those. Second on that list is a good book. Some people like reading through a book to be able to do this. Now, I realize, of course, some people have a hard time with books. So maybe videos are better for you. Okay, well, maybe you don't do the book. These are 4 good suggestions, but they're not requirements. So you pick the 4 that make sense for you, or the combination of these that make sense for you. Third on this list would be some hands-on. A lab. I've got some labs on my site from CompTIA that are very good labs. I've gone through all of those labs on the CompTIA site. The CertMaster labs that we have there are very good labs. There's other labs you can find and other things you can do yourself. But sitting at the keyboard and typing and hitting those keys, there's something about doing that. It's a muscle memory. For those of you that play a musical instrument, you know, when you get to a point where you can play the song, you're not even thinking anymore about how the keys are on the keyboard or where you put your fingers to do that particular chord. It's just something that is natural. You sort of remember physically how to make that particular song work. Similar thing on the keyboard. Similar thing with running the netstat command, with running the traceroute command, with running any of these commands. And I think there's something that fires. There's a synapse that enlightens itself in our brain that kind of locks it in sometimes. So sometimes looking at the video, reading it in a book, and then doing it is that third piece that people like to have to lock in that particular topic. And the fourth one, the thing that's also good is to get some Q&A. Get somebody practice questions that you could go through. Of course, I have my practice exams book. That's a great way to do it. There's other questions out there you can use, but have some type of test where you could see if you really grasp that particular topic and if you can put it into a context that the exam is going to expect you to do and get it correct. So those are the 4 things. Get a good video course. Where are you going to get that from? Get a good book. Get some good hands-on, and then get some good Q&A. If you have all 4 of those, in my mind, you have the best possible chance for passing your exam. But maybe, as I mentioned, maybe books don't work so well for you. Maybe videos don't work so well for you. So you can mix and match these. You can throw one out and maybe use others a little bit more, but you should use your exam objectives as your barometer. Use that as your checklist to be able to know, do I know that topic or do I not know that topic? And if you can go through the entire set of exam objectives and check everything off, then you're ready for your exam. That's the way it works. So make sure that you have a look at those. Make sure you go through the list, use all 4 of things, that at least those 4, to be able to have the best possible chance, or some combination of them that makes sense for your style of study. Everybody has a different style of study. So that's where that comes from. Make sure you give it a look. Use your exam objectives as your guideline, and I think you'll do fine. Let's do some more questions that you are submitting. Submit a question anytime using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Other questions that we have here. This is more of a question about purchasing these study materials we have. It's from Bob, who asks, I'd like to purchase a bundle for the 1101, 1102 exams with notes and practice tests. Thank you, Bob. Bob says, do you accept payment plans like PayPal, for instance? Now, payment plans, if you look at PayPal or some of the link or some of the other options that are out there for breaking these up into multiple sets, I don't think I have it configured for that. Maybe it is an option. I don't see it from my side. So that's one of the things about those pay in 3 installments kind of things that PayPal and other organizations will do, is that I don't see that part. They handle that part for you. It's really between you and PayPal, or you and the credit card transaction provider that's doing this for you. I don't ever see that part. I see a transaction, a single transaction, and they handle the billing of that after the fact. So I don't think I have any that are specifically set up that way, but it's something that may be added as an option during checkout through the PayPal that you are using. I don't know. You'll have to tell me if that's something you're doing. That may be something good you can try. And it may help from a financial perspective. That may be very useful. I never recommend going into debt for your training, but being able to separate this out in a way that is not going to cost you anything extra, but it kind of puts it out over a number of months, that's not a bad gig. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. And if you have more details or other things that you're looking for, you can always send me a note. Always click the Contact Us link at the top of the website. Those come directly to me, and then I can figure out if there's a specific question you have, how to answer that. I can go back to PayPal, I can go back to Stripe, I can go back to these other companies we work with and figure out how they're doing it and the best way to set it up. You just tell me. We'll figure it out. Next on our list, people are already asking, since I mentioned the A+ exam is changing in 2025, a year from now. We'll retire the ones that we have now a year from now, which means we'll probably see a new A+ exam maybe in the first quarter of next year. So really we got 6 months before you're ever even seeing a new A+ exam. So don't stop your studies because you think you want to take the new A+ exam. Bad idea. Keep studying. You'll be able to finish your A+ exam before the next one even comes out, and you'll already be A+ certified. I think that's, from a perspective of getting a job or getting a better job, that's a better way to do it. But the question from Hendrik asks, how much would you say the A+ exam changes in 2025? Now, as many of you know, the A+ exam objectives for the new version are already available. And of course, I have gone through every single objective. I've compared the objectives in the new exam to the objectives in the existing exam. I have documented how many of those are no longer in the new version, and I have calculated how many new topics are included in the new version. And in this particular case, in this year, when this transition period, and of course, I go back to the A+ exams on the 600 series, the 700 series, the 800 series, the 900 series, the 1000 series, and the 1100 series where we're currently at. So this is my 6th series of A+. We're coming up on the 7th series of A+. The 7th series is unique in that on all of the previous versions of A+, that I've just referred to, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1100, every single one of those had a change in the version of Windows. Windows updated itself from Windows NT to Windows 98, 95. We go back with those. Then it goes to Windows XP. Then it goes to Vista. Then it goes. So we have this transition every time there was a new version because Microsoft was updating their Windows version about every 3 years. And so the CompTIA exams would also have updates for the new versions of Windows every 3 years. Guess what didn't happen over the last 3 years? We did not get a new version of Windows. So the new A+ exam doesn't have any new Windows content because there's not a new version of Windows. That's something that's a little bit different. And because of that, the exam itself, there are changes. First, it's not the same thing. You would never study from older materials if you're taking a newer version of the exam. But this newer version of the exam is not going to have a new version of Windows. So a big chunk of the things that would normally change in the exam are not there, which means there is a smaller amount of things that have changed. Are there changes? Yes, there are. Are there some new topics? Yes, there are. Is a good bit of the exam very similar to the old? Yes, it is. So we have specific numbers. We're way too early to even be talking about specifics with this exam because none of you should even be considering taking that exam at this point. You should all be focusing on all of this. But there are some things that are added. There's some things that are changed. There's differences in networking. There's differences in the cloud computing. They added some things about AI because everything in this world is talking about AI right now. We'll see if AI turns out to be to go the way of the phablet. So if you go back to earlier versions of the A+, we had to learn about the phablets. I'm not saying it wrong. It's phablet, PH phablet. So there are new things on this exam also that are kind of keeping up to date with the latest trends in the industry, but it's no huge part of the exam. Do not be swayed or diverted away by press releases or documentation that says all of these new things are new on the exam. There's very little that's new on these exams. Very, very little. So of course they're going to put a blurb in there about AI because everybody's talking about how bad AI is. Did I say that? I think I did. No, it's not true. If you need a bad picture, AI is there for you. But if you ever need to do anything on your network or in your operating system or with security, we're not quite there with AI yet. But there are technologies in AI you need to know about because it is an emerging technology. We're just trying to figure it out at this point. We've not gotten good at it yet, but we're all wanting it to be good. We're all hoping that it will be good. But is it going to be the next token ring? Is it going to be the next ATM network? We don't know that part yet. So, of course, though, there's topics in there that we need to know about and things relating to AI. And they, of course, have added a couple topics in there. But it is in no way a significant part of the new exam. So that's one good thing, that if you are studying now and you're worried that there's a new version coming out and I want the latest and greatest, well, in this case, not a lot's different. So you would be waiting for no reason for probably the first time in over 10 years. The other part is the topics that are covered because there's not much difference. This will be a very easy transition once we finally get to this point at the end of 2025. So it's really an upside for everybody at this point. You can study today and take your exam and not have to worry that you're missing something, which I think a lot of people do when these new exams are out. But we also have a chance when you finally get to the end of this and there's going to be a group of people that try to pass their exam on the last day it's available at the end of 2025. And sometimes they pass and sometimes they don't. The good news is that if you don't have time to finish up your studies by the time this latest version is retired, you can very easily transition into the new version. So it's a win-win. I'll also tell you that there's a few things that have been added that are a little bit of a surprise. So they put those in. I guess everything is a surprise because you didn't know what was coming. And some things have been removed. So there's always changes. on these exams, my recommendation to you is don't worry about the new exam at this point. We're way too early in this stretch. There's no benefit to wait and take a new exam. If anything, it's a disadvantage to wait and take the new exam because the people that are studying today are going to earn their A+ certification. You don't have it yet. You're waiting for some reason to get your A+ certification. They already got certified. They've already got their CVs and their resumes out. They're already getting the job. And if you come across them in a job hunt, they're already A+ certified and you're not. So why did you wait? What were you thinking? That's the benefit of really understanding the details. So I would recommend not worrying so much about the details. But if you're someone who really likes to get into the details, you really want to understand what those differences are, CompTIA has those available for you to download. You can sift through them. You can look through the differences. And I think once you look through those, you'll say, well, this is like the same thing. This is pretty much the same exam. There is very little that's changed. There are differences, but not as much as previous years. So I guess there's a benefit to that as well. Let's do some more questions. You can submit questions at any time using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. And I'll take one from the chat room since this one we can answer earlier. Do I have any examples of performance-based questions? Well, of course, there's many places to get performance-based questions from. I'm not sure where you'd be able to find any of them with performance-based questions, but I do have some in my practice exams book. I have 3 exams in here. 5 questions in each exam are performance-based questions. So there are 15 performance-based questions in my book. But let's say you want to get them for free. Well, I've been doing these study groups for years, and the first new question on every study group is a performance-based question. So you can go back in time in our archives and simply look at those. Some of them are hands-on. Some of them are matching questions. Some of them are drag and drop. Some of them are putting things in a particular order. We kind of mix it up a little bit, try to give you some different ideas of things to work on. That's a good place to go for absolutely free performance-based questions. They're just part of the normal study group that we do every month. And that might be a good place to go to find some things that can help you prepare for performance-based questions. I think a lot of people worry about performance-based questions as if they're different or they're tricky or they're hard, difficult. You can't get through them. What I find most people doing is once they're done with their exam, they come back and say, why did I worry about performance-based questions? They were very straightforward. Well, I knew exactly what it was asking for. They came directly from the exam objectives. I worried for no reason. And I think that's a common response. Don't worry about the performance-based question. We're always worried about the fear of the unknown. Always gets us, right? We're not really sure what to be faced with, so it's frightening. But like most things in technology, just because we don't know it, we certainly are more anxious. But then when you jump into it, you realize, oh, well, that's it? Installing Windows. Oh, I've never installed Windows. How hard is it to install Windows? Let's run through the install process. Oh, that was it? Oh, okay. Well, that's what we should do. Installing Windows. So I think if you are someone who's very worried about these, do not worry. If there's some anxiety you have about the performance-based questions, do not have anxiety about them. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings too about how much the performance-based questions are even worth to your final score. The answer is we don't know. I heard someone this past week say, one thing that we're very sure about is performance-based questions are worth much more than multiple choice. We don't know that at all. If anything, there's some evidence that might show that performance-based questions are worth less than multiple choice questions. And certainly on your exam, I think overall, the performance-based questions are much smaller number of points than all of the multiple choice-based questions. We have had examples of people in this study group who have said, I took my exam, I skipped over the performance-based questions at the beginning, I took all the multiple choice questions, and before I could circle back and take the performance-based questions and answer them, ran out of time. Didn't get to answer one of them, and they passed. So it really is this situation where we can speculate. We can think that it might be one way or the other, but the reality is we don't know. And it may be different on one person's exam than the other. So even if we come up with a scenario for one person, it may not be the same scenario for someone else. So this could be that they are worth a lot of points. It could be that they're worth almost nothing. We don't know. And here's the thing, we will never know. CompTIA is never going to tell us. So we can have this conversation about, it's a sports conversation. Oh, well, how are the Dolphins going to do this year? Well, here's what I think is going to happen. We don't know. Now with the Dolphins, we could see at the end of the season how bad they did. And then we'll know how bad it was. With the questions, we have no idea. What if the Dolphins played a whole season and we never learn the outcome? We don't know what any of the scores were. We knew the final score, but we don't know how we got there. We don't know any of the plays that were run. We have no idea who scored what. That's kind of where we're at. We know the final score of our CompTIA exams. We have no idea how we got there. And they will never tell you. So maybe the sports analogy just fell right apart right there. That's what I mean. It's danger, people. We're just figuring it out as we go. So I really would recommend, if you're someone who is really, really working towards understanding how the exam is scored, and let's use some type of formula to figure, don't do that. Instead, take all of that energy, take all of that time that you would have spent on speculation and put that into exam objectives. Put that into listing out the things you don't know. Put that into researching more about the things you're not really secure on. That's what you should be doing, because ultimately you'll never know and none of it really matters. The only thing that matters is the final score. And the only thing that we know matters with that final score is you studying more of those exam topics. Stick to the topics, you will be fine. So let's do some more questions. We do have some time left, so let's keep working through this list and see what's there. So here's a good one. So question from Jay asks, someone earlier in the chat say they had 70 questions. Have you ever heard something like that? Well, I hear stuff like that all the time. In fact, if you were to look at let's just go to the CompTIA website. Not sure why I'm flipping around with my slides. Don't listen to me. Let's go to CompTIA.org. That is their website. And I'm going to go to their testing, their certification section. We're going to go to the A+. In fact, let me go back real quick. Here we are on the CompTIA website. Who's that guy? I don't even know. Certifications. Let's choose A+. Get somebody. Hey, is that the same guy? It's a different guy. But on this list are a set of exam details. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And they tell you on the CompTIA website that the exam itself is an exam that covers, they even tell you, number of questions. The number of questions are a maximum of 90 questions per exam. So the 90 questions number you get is the maximum you could get. Very often you get fewer than 90 questions. So it's perfectly reasonable that someone could say, yeah, I got 70 questions on my exam. I got 80 questions on my exam. It could be less than 90. It does not have to be 90. And often I would say it's probably pretty rare for someone to get 90. I would think there's a balancing act here. I think some questions are designed to take a shorter amount of time than others. And I think they piece them together that way. I think there's difficulty levels involved. Every question we believe is worth a different number of points. I think it's also worth a different amount of time on the exam. They compile all these together until they hit a certain point, and that's the number you get. So I think that's how they do it. So if you're expecting 90, you're probably not going to get 90. If you do get 90, it's unusual, but not within the realm of possibility. You will not get 91 or more. So that's really what they're telling you here, is that you don't have to worry about that too much, because you can sometimes and very often get fewer than 90 questions on your exam. How did they calculate this? We don't know. How did they figure out the final score? We don't know. It's just a black box. Just goes in there and then a number comes out the other side. What we do know is that the more you know, the better that score is. So what we focus on is getting you to know more. And we think that that will show up as a higher score at the end. That's my objective. Someone asking the vouchers on our site. And since you brought it up, why don't we have a look at that page? This is the vouchers page on professormesser.com/vouchers. There it is at the top. The vouchers that we have here are from the CompTIA exam. For A+, it's a little bit different. Network Plus is a single exam. You only need one voucher. Security Plus is a single exam. You only need one voucher. A+, though, you have to pass, well, thank you, Google. A+, you have to pass 2 exams to be A+ certified. And you can use this voucher towards the 1101 exam or the 1102 exam. And you can use this for going to a testing center. You can use this voucher for taking this at home. And the one thing, if you scroll down a little bit, now I give you the Exam Hacks ebook with this, but I explain in these, whenever we put these important terms and conditions, they really are important because they tell you a lot about how this exam is set up to work. In fact, I need to update this because all of the U.S. territories are now included with this voucher purchase. You'll see that when you check out. I just need to update this page. It says that one voucher is applicable to one exam and an authorized CompTIA test service provider or taking the exam at home, which is also the authorized test service provider that's doing it for you at home. So it's one exam. When you buy one voucher, it's good for one exam sitting. So that's the thing you should always focus on. If for the A+ exam, you have to pass 2 exams, you will need 2 vouchers. So that's where those come from. That's what the difference is and what the thing you need to know about with vouchers in your exams. So make sure you are familiar with those. A lot of you are asking other questions about, okay, well, what is the weight of the performance-based question? We don't know. There's no way to know. So I can only tell you to not even worry about it. Just put it out of your mind. We don't know how much they're worth. Just learn as much as you can. And the final score will work itself out at the end. There's just no way to wag the dog on this one. You have got to just treat the dog nicely and the tail will wag itself. That's all I can really recommend for doing any of these. Let's see if other ones that we're working through, if you're someone who's really going down the list of these, let's see how we do with other questions that you've submitted. And again, you can submit a question at any time at professorbesser.com/QA. Others, let's see others that questions that are coming in. Some good stuff are coming in. We mentioned this date at the beginning, but I'll mention it again because Stephen asks. Stephen says, hi, I want to know if you know when the 220-1102 will be retired. Until when do we have to complete the Core 2 and the Core 1? Well, CompTIA has not given us specific dates yet. We are getting closer to these specific dates, but fortunately, it's a very standard set of dates that they always seem to apply. There's the dates. We did this sort of a smash cut there, right there. Cut, boom, right to it. So the 1101 and 1102 were released in April the 20th of 2022. CompTIA tends to retire exams 3.5 years after they have been released. So if the exam was released in April of 2022, we would expect these exams to be retired in October of 2025. And I think that's a pretty good estimation. That date can change because that's not an official date yet. But if we go back over the last 15 years, this is what CompTIA has done with their exam dates. So I think that's a pretty good number to stick with. If you're trying to figure out, am I studying for the right exam? Yes, because you have until October or so of 2025. Now, they will update their website with more details as they get more closer, or as we get closer to that date, as they get more information to us. But the goal for you right now, as we sit here in September of 2024, this is the exam version you should be studying. So focus on that, and I think you will be just fine. This is a sort of a personal question. Those are the best kind, from Michael, that asks, that's not the screen. Let's do this screen right here. There it is. Michael asks, how confident in your knowledge were you when you first started taking these exams? Now, I've been taking industry certification exams before A+, Network Plus, Security Plus was really a popular option. In some cases, was an option at all. So some of the very first certification exams I took were the Certified Network Expert exams. CNX was the certification nomenclature we used for that. It was the term we referred to those. Certified Network Expert, CNX. See what we did? There was at the time a certification from Novell called the CNE, the Certified Network Expert. Well, it wasn't an expert. It was a Certified Novell Expert, CNE. So to have some differentiation there, CNX was more of the networking certs. There were CNX certs for Ethernet. I've heard of that. Token Ring. It's dating me a bit. FIDI. No, not that guy. It's a different FIDI. It's an FDDI. That FIDI. There is ATM. There was a CNX for ATM. Different ATM. Not that ATM. The asynchronous transfer mode networking. And then there was one for cabling. So the idea of these were really hard exams. These were detailed exams about probably the hardest I've found on networking. People talk about Cisco exams, hard for networking. No. You had nothing on the CNX. CNX is once you finish those CNX exams, you pass that exam, you were very familiar with these technologies. So we had to pass these exams. I was working for a company called Network General. They're not around anymore. They were purchased by NetScout. But Network General created a product you probably have heard of called the Sniffer. This is obviously a network analyzer. At the time, the network analyzer. There were obviously others in the industry that people chose, but they were the leader. And I was a systems engineer at Network General. So I got a chance to really get into that product and understand what's happening on the network at a protocol level. And if you ever want to understand everything there is to understand about how the network is operating, you can watch the protocols and it tells you everything. This is not like Packet Tracer. The Sniffer gathers the packets from the network and shows you in real time. If there was anything modern that you could, at least in some way, give some type of comparison, more like Wireshark. Think of it that way. So, except Wireshark doesn't have the expert capabilities the Sniffer had. Wireshark does not have, I guess it's coming close now to the breadth of protocol decodes that existed in there. And that's a very, very amazing tool when you first start using it, because it's showing you a part of the network you've never seen before. It's sort of like putting something under a microscope and realizing, whoa, there's a whole world of things in here. That single blood cell is a very complex thing, and we need to look at it at that level to really understand what's happening in the human body. Same thing on the network side. We're able to look at everything going back and forth between these two systems at a protocol level to really understand, why is there a slowness? Why is there a perceived slowness by the end user? Is it a problem on the server? Is it a problem on the client? Is it a problem in the network? How would you be able to tell if you weren't able to get a sample of the blood, if you weren't able to look at the conversation on the network itself? And what was interesting about these exams is that there wasn't a lot of places to go to study. At the time, there was a time before there was the internet where there was no internet. Hard to believe. There was no internet. How did we do anything? I often ask myself the same question. We had to have paper maps. That's how we did it. But one of the challenges when you start looking at studying for these is, where do you go? There were some study guides available. At least we had a guideline of things to study, but it was very often walking into the exam, taking it, and hope we knew enough about these topics to be able to pass the certification. The problem with the CNX is these were hard exams. So from my perspective, I'm not a great exam taker. There's a lot of anxiety I have when taking an exam. I get very nervous, get very clammy. My hands are clammy. I'm not able to take the exam, walk into the exam and understand what I'm reading. That type of thing. When you sit down, you've got this anxiety. You sit down, you start reading the screen. Okay, all right, here we go. How confident in your knowledge were you when you first started taking the exams? Was that in English? I'm not sure what I'm reading. I'm seeing the words. I'm understanding the characters. They seem like they're characters, like the Roman type character. There seem to be symbols that I recognize, but for some reason my brain is not able to take those words and put them together in a form that is understandable to me. And that's because I'm just too nervous when you walk in the door. That's why I often will tell you when you sit down for the A+ exam, there's like a 15-minute period where you're able to read through the candidate agreement before the exam starts. And I will often tell people, especially when you have some level of anxiety like that, just read it. Sit there for 15 minutes. Use every moment of that 15 minutes and read through it. Just read it. Sit in the chair, sit back, kind of get that adrenaline out of your system. And even if you're not understanding what it's saying initially, eventually, okay, now I'm getting better. I'm getting more normal. We're getting back into the real world. I'm starting to understand what it's saying on the screen. Okay, I agree with the candidate agreement. Let's start the exam. And you can roll right into it. But I think if you were to start the exam, you just scroll down, click OK, and go into the exam, you're missing an opportunity to kind of chill out a little bit, to kind of focus, to kind of make that deep breaths, and kind of really get into the mode of taking the exam. This might be an important thing if you are someone like me where it's hard to take an exam. When you first get in there, though, you really did have to study. And that's why I tell people, stick to the exam objectives. If you use that as your checklist, you will be more confident when you walk into the exam because the questions that pop up when you first start the exam will be topics you immediately recognize. You're like, oh, I know the answer to that. Boom, got that one. Next. And you can go through it with much more of a confidence, with much more of a knowledge of what you are seeing on the screen. Because on these certification exams, it's the unknown that always gets you. And if you're taking Cisco exam, Microsoft exam, Apple exam, AWS exam, any of these others, they don't give you a lot of detail in the exam content. You have to buy a book, you have to take a course, but in CompTIA, they tell you everything. They tell you every topic you need to know, and they stick to that paper. They don't go outside the scope of that paper. So if you know the paper, you're going to know the exam. So although there is always concern when you walk into the room, there's always a worry about confidence and a worry that you're not going to know the content. If you use the exam objectives and you've gone through this process of learning where you can lock that information away, you will immediately be more successful when you start the exam. I will also tell you that there have been exams that I have failed. There was a CNX exam I failed twice before I finally passed it. What I found out when I failed the exam the first time, world did not end. Nobody died. Nothing bad happened. The sun was still in the sky. The grass was still green. The air was still clean. Nothing was wrong with anything else. I just didn't get the numbers I wanted on that exam. So you just go back and you study some more. It's not the end of the world. In fact, it's an opportunity because now you've sat for the exam. You now understand the process. Maybe you know the testing center a little better. You know the people at the testing center. You understand a lot of the questions that were asked. Now you're understanding more of the style of the questions. So now when you go back to study a little bit more, you're studying with a better understanding of what you were faced with the first time. So failing the exam is not a failure. It's just a temporary delay to you passing the exam. And if anything, it's an information gathering exercise. It's an intelligence exercise. It's an intel exercise. Not your intelligence. You're collecting intelligence. You're getting smarter by failing the exam. It's true. That's exactly what happens. So don't worry so much about the anxiety or the urgency you have about passing it. You're going to pass it eventually. So that's why I tell people all the time, focus on the exam, focus on the objectives, walk in there, do the best you can. The final number is going to be whatever the final number is. If you pass, that's great. If you don't, they give you a list of all of the topics you missed. More intel. You can take that back, study those topics, study the things you think you're weak on, go back in, take it again. If anything, I get this is not to dismiss this in any way. The only thing you've really lost is a little bit of money when you took the exam. You had to pay for the exam to take it. There is pain there. I get it. That is a painful thing. But like they say, it's just money. Can't take it with you. So focus on what you learned from the process and don't worry so much about the result. Because the result, you're only failing the exam if you stopped taking it. You're going to pass this exam eventually. So focus on passing the exam and I think you'll be okay. I think that's really your goal. If it doesn't happen the first time, you go back, take it again. Doesn't happen the second time, go back, take it again. They're not going to stop offering it. In fact, they would love for you to keep paying to take this exam. So just keep taking it. Not even a worry. Finally, somebody asked about games, which sometimes there are topics that we do cover here. It's from Anonymous, who says, do you play games? If so, what genre are you most interested in? I love gaming. I've been gaming since there have been gaming systems. I've been gaming since the very first Atari 2600. I still have my Atari 2600 somewhere in a box, something. I love the idea of gaming. I like the social aspect of gaming. I like that you're able to play with other people. That was one of the benefits of the 2600. You have your friends right next to you and you're playing the game together, either against each other or you're working together to solve a particular problem. Of course, these days, there's tons of games available. Now, the problem I have is just time, is that I have very little time at the end of the day to sit down. Sometimes, as we've already discussed, there's chaos. Don't have time that night to do as much gaming as I used to be able to do. That's not kind of how things work for me anyway, but I can get a couple hours in here and there. And because of that, I try to get on games that are very social, where there are a lot of people. So I have kind of focused my efforts. The Xbox is a great place to go because there's always games. There's always people online. You can always talk to somebody. I like EVE Online because it's an enormous environment. It's its own universe. There's tons of people online. There's always somebody to talk to. I like World of Warcraft because it's an enormous environment. It's in its own universe. There's tons of people online. There's always somebody to talk to. In fact, I'm looking for a new guild. So if there's anybody out there, Horde, if there's anybody out there, I know these days they blend them together, but we know that's not really true, right? Right? So if anybody has an option, let me know. If anybody has a suggestion, send me an email, send me a message in Discord. Tell me what Horde guild I should be looking at. It's got to be casual. It's got to be somebody who won't mind me checking in for 2 hours every once in a while and then bailing out. I'm not going to be there for raid night, that kind of thing. I'm too busy doing these other things. But you know what I mean? You need to find something as an outlet. It's always good to focus your efforts on learning and getting through these topics. You've got things you need to do at home. You've got family things you got to work on. There are things you got to do for your job. There's always responsibilities you're going to have to worry about. But it's always good, I think, to kind of have an outlet, to kind of just kind of settle down and have some fun with these things. So that's where I like to do. I like to have a little bit of fun every once in a while and just kind of veg out and have some fun with other people as well. Having single player games for me is not as much fun. I do like single player games, but I like it more when there's other people there. Mostly because most of the day I'm in this dark room in front of a computer by myself. So it would be good. It's sort of like when you first have kids, for those of you that have been through the process, that first year is you and the children and the family, and it's constant taking care of. you would just like to talk to another adult at some point. Yeah, it's a similar idea, but this is my baby here. So every once in a while, though, it is good to talk to another adult. And I think that's what I kind of focus on, the gaming part of it. And it's not always gaming. Sometimes it is going somewhere and talking to other adults in the world. So we do that as well. I'm not in front of the gaming console 24/7, or I'm not in front of this screen 24/7, thankfully. But having that interaction, I think, can be kind of nice. Talk to another human every once in a while. See what's going on in their world. See if they can teach you a little bit of something, and make that happen. I think that's an important part of it. Let's keep going. I have another couple of minutes. We can get some more questions. Let's make it a good one. I don't want to work through here. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think it is worth mentioning again. And I think this one kind of puts things in perspective. This is from John. John asks, the nearest testing center is a 2-hour drive from me. Should I make the trip, or is taking the test remotely from home doable? So this is a topic that is argued back and forth quite a bit on the internets. And it really depends on your perspective. So for those of you that are probably not familiar with this already, when you're ready to take your exam, the traditional form of exam taking for these certifications is you go to a testing center that has been set up and verified and qualified by Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE is a company. There's a lot of different aspects to Pearson VUE and a lot of different businesses that they have. But one of the businesses they have is they provide certification exam testing centers. So you can go to a Pearson VUE site, or one that Pearson VUE has qualified to be one of their sites, and take an exam at that testing center. That's traditionally how we've been doing this. And so I get in my car, I get on the bus, I get somebody to Uber me, whatever we do, we get to this facility. It's often a training center. Sometimes it's part of a university, or it may just be a standalone place where you take tests. There's a few of those. And you walk in, you give them your ID. They take you to a room that has been specifically designed with the specifications from Pearson VUE. The room has to be contained. There's a certain noise requirement. You have to have a certain type of computer. It has to have a certain type of monitor. You have to have a certain mouse and keyboard. There has to be a certain type of writing instrument. There's a certain type of thing you would write on. All of these things have been pre-planned, designed, and laid out. And this testing center must comply with those requirements from Pearson VUE. So Pearson has done a great job at doing this because there are testing centers all over the place, all over the world that you could go to, and many, many, many in North America. But what you will find, sometimes a testing center will shut down. Maybe it was at a training center and the training center is not open anymore. Well, that means the testing center is not open anymore. And maybe that was the only testing center in your area. Maybe now the nearest testing center, 2 hours away, like in John's situation, which means you'd have to get in a car and drive 2 hours and then drive 2 hours back. Half your day is gone already to be able to do that. So one of the things that many organizations took advantage of was the internet's ability to be able to send and receive audio and video and do a lot of this remotely. This was really driven home during the lockdowns with COVID. And although CompTIA had been playing around with this in kind of a beta phase prior to this, I guess they're very fortunate they had been doing that, because when everything locked down, there were no testing centers to go to. And so they immediately ramped up their online testing service. And that is something that is currently available for the CompTIA exams. You can schedule your exam online. You sit there with your laptop, with your desktop computer, and you take the exam in front of your system at home. But the system you have at home and the room where you take your computer, for example, if you looked at this room, I couldn't take an exam in this room. This is not a secure area. There's way too many monitors. There's way too much recording equipment. There's too many ways that the exam could go sideways in this environment. So they have very strict requirements for setting up your exam area when you're taking your exam at home. They are not difficult requirements. They're not insurmountable. They're just very specific. They want your home testing environment to be just as secure as going to a testing center. That makes sense. You want to be sure the sanctity of the exam, the integrity of the exam is maintained, which makes perfect sense. And you will find that they need to have a camera because they're watching you and recording you the entire time. This has to have a microphone. They're listening to you the entire time. But by the way, that's exactly the same as a testing center. There's a camera and they are listening. So a lot of people will even say, I was taking my exam at home and I was muttering along with the exam. I was saying, the nearest testing center is a 2-hour drive from me. Should I make the... And the proctor popped up a message on the screen says, you're talking. Do not talk during the exam. And people take a lot of umbrage to that. They're very offended that someone told them to stop talking in their own home. But the reason, of course, is there could be recording equipment around and you could be dictating the exam content into the recording equipment. There's a perfectly valid reason for doing that. And by the way, you can't talk at a testing center either. Keep your mouth shut at a testing center. What are you doing? You can't talk in a testing center room. There's other people taking their exams. So in actuality, when you think about it, it's exactly the same. Can't talk at home, can't talk in a testing center. You do have some things you're able to do and some things you're not able to do. They've done a very good job at documenting all of this on the CompTIA website and on the Pearson VUE website. So if you are someone who is really focusing on understanding what is important for the exam itself, how you should be acting during the exam, things that are allowed and things are not allowed, it is well documented. So you should have a pretty good understanding. I would also recommend that you go to the CompTIA subreddit and read through on reddit.com what other people's testing experience has been when they are at home. Some people make some very bad decisions when they are at home. For example, some people will be in the middle of their exam and FedEx will be at the door and they'll get up and go off the screen and go get FedEx. And then they'll come back and think that they're going to continue their exam. And they'll come back to a screen that says, your exam is over. We have stopped your exam. It is now finished. You are done. Because you can't leave the camera. That's part of the rules. You can't talk. There can't be somebody walking through behind you in the middle of the exam. Your exam is over. So there are things at home that can happen that would not happen in a testing center. That could cause you to have your entire testing process now done. That is how they maintain the integrity of the exam. You don't need somebody walking behind you during the exam. They're looking at the exam. Who knows? Are they making notes? Are they recording it? What are they doing? That's not the way you do an online exam. So, but the fortunate part is they tell you. Now, I was taking an exam at a test. If I was ready to take a certification exam right now, I would go to a testing center if it's one that's close to me. Because I don't want to have to deal with any of those extra things in my testing process. There are other people that have taken online exams. They've taken a handful of them. They've taken 5 exams at home. They've taken 7 exams at home, have never run into a problem. And they will tell you that. Like, nope, it's not a problem at all. Not an issue. Took all 7 of those. Never ran into a problem. The proctors never talked to me about anything. But I'll also bet that they spent a lot of time making sure they had the right testing environment, that they knew what the rules were. They weren't putting their hand in front of their mouth. They weren't talking. They weren't getting off camera because they knew you couldn't do any of those things. So the more you prepare for this environment at home, I think the more relaxed you will be. And I think the more you will be prepared. If you suddenly realize that your hand is in front of your mouth and a message pops up on the screen that says, please remove your hand from your mouth. Go, oh, that's right. My bad. Sorry. Got it. You're not thrown by that. But what if you didn't know that was a rule? And suddenly that message pops up. you have a whole different set of thoughts that go through your brain at that point. You're now taken completely out of the exam. What do you mean I can't talk? What do you mean I can't put my hand in front of my mouth? I didn't know about that. Is that going to be a problem? Now you've lost your whole process you were in with the exam. Now you got to get back into the exam. You got to focus now back on this instead of worrying. Are my hands in the right place? Am I saying the right thing? Am I not? Is it quiet? Am I not? That's what you don't want to be in, is a situation where you're second guessing yourself, where you're worrying about yourself. So maybe a testing center would be better for you if possible. Or maybe now that you're more comfortable, you know what to expect, you can get through the exam just fine. Even if they have a problem with you doing something during the exam, it's not going to throw you. You know this has happened to other people. You know the process that we go through, and you can work through those. I will also say it's not always the end of the world. I have had someone in our chat came in and said, I was working on my exam and something happened right at the end of the exam. They either got the message that they had passed and they stood up and gave a big woohoo, passed the exam, not realizing that technically the exam was still going on. I guess technically it wasn't. But in the world of Pearson VUE, the exam is not over until they click the end exam button on their side. And so when that happens, and it shows you passed the exam, they will stop the exam process, even though it tells you you passed the exam. And the question they had for us was, they just fail me on an exam that I just passed? Now, fortunately, whenever they end the exam, whatever score you have is the score you have. So if they end it after the first question, you probably failed. But if they ended it one question before the end, it's very possible that all of the work you've done so far through this exam gives you enough points to actually pass. And in this particular example, this user had not finished their exam yet. They got very close to the end and the exam was revoked, or it was closed out. And I said, well, did you check online what your score was? And they go, no, because they canceled the exam. I need another voucher. Like, you need to log in, look at your CompTIA account and see what it says. And they immediately came back and says, oh, I passed. I'm done. Like, that's right. You don't have to take the exam again. So that's why it does matter when they revoke the exam, because you could have passed the exam even though they hit the off button. They hit the power down button. They stopped the whole thing. Take them out of here. We're done, everybody. Close it out. But it turns out you got through enough of the exam that you passed. That does happen too. So my recommendation for those of you planning to take your exam at home is to be very, very, very familiar with the rules and regulations. And I think if you spend a lot of time making sure you've set up the right environment, you've got people helping you outside the room, keep things quiet, handle people coming to the door. Maybe if you live alone, you can put a note on the door, testing inside, do not knock, seriously, don't do it, whatever. And you make these plans, I think you'll be okay. In fact, I don't think it'll throw you at that point. And that makes your online experience, now you have an option. Now you can take this exam online instead of driving that 2 hours to it and driving the 2 hours back. That's really going to be the most important part. I will tell you again, it's important to go through those and understand what's there. But I will also tell you that those exam objectives are incredibly important. So for those of you wondering, how do you know if you're really ready to take the exam? This will tell you. You will know immediately because you can go through the exam objectives. Let's look at the first section. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components. Be able to do a hardware/device replacement of a battery. How do you swap out a battery? Keyboard/keys. How do you do that on a laptop? Random access memory. How do you do that on a laptop? Hard disk drive, solid state drive migration. How does that work? So you have to know the process. You have to understand how these all work together. But if you know that, you're ready for that section of the exam. So all you have to do is go through each one of these bullets. If you can check off every bullet, if you know the content and you can check it off, you're ready to take the exam. Now, if you've gone through this whole list and you know about half of it, you're not ready yet. So this is a great document. The exam objectives are free. You can get them at professormesser.com/objectives. They are a great final checklist that will tell you if you're really ready to take this exam or not. It's a very inexpensive way to know. You could save some money before booking your exam. Use that as your barometer. And I think that's one way that can really help you if you're planning to get through this exam and really understand if you're ready or maybe if you're not ready. You have to be honest with yourself when you go through this list, but it's really going to help you on the end when you're ready to take this exam. Well, I think that gives us a great place to stop this particular live stream. We've gone through a couple of hours at this point of questions that I've had for you, and you've been able to ask questions here in the after show, which is always fun too. And we got through it without any problems, right? There's no big issues that came up on this one, thankfully. Maybe next time. I'll work harder next time. We'll come up with something controversial. I promise. That's what YouTube would like. Maybe not. We won't do that. But we're doing this again in 2 days. So come back on Thursday. We're doing this on a Tuesday. Come back in 2 days. We have our Core 2 study group. Be great to have you back here. I have a whole new set of questions. They're all for the Core 2 exam. And it's a great way to see if you're ready for the Core 2 piece. And we'll do an after show for that one too and figure out what questions you might have for me. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you like this video, please, oh, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to subscribe to our channel, you can find us at professormesser.com/YouTube. Thank you everyone for joining us. Come on back Thursday. We'd love to see you again. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks again.